I'm Dr. David Johnson, Professor of Medicine and Chief of Gastroenterology at Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia. And welcome back to another Computer Connect. Well, diet recommendations are seen routinely, the internet, TikTok, new books, everything seems to be out there, and really a lot of evidence lacking. In particular, what do we want to talk about as it relates to healthy diet? And that's where I want to spend a few minutes and give you what the evidence is presently, and what do I talk to my patients, and perhaps suggest some things that you can use in your patient discussion. Well, first of all, where are we? The Western diet is something that really is cannibalized the health of the United States and really the Western civilizations. And this is a diet that is typically characterized by high intakes of processed and pre-packed food items, red meat, dairy, and grains. It's clearly high fat, high protein, again, low fiber components. And these are things that have become diets of convenience as opposed to diets of potential promoting health. And it's led to diseases of civilization, they're called, as it relates to cardiovascular diseases, obesity, a variety of metabolic diseases, and cancers that are now increasing as it relates to association with this Western diet. Well, these Western diets have been also associated with a variety of things as it relates to microbial changes and also gut integrity changes, necessarily driven through this Western diet, associated with decreases in microbial diversity in the gut. We know that that is not such a good thing. Upregulation of pro-inflammatory mediators, cytokines and chemokines, again, not such a good thing. A variety of changes to gut integrity and immunity, and pathways that really are derivatives towards diseases and promoting even translocation of gut bacteria, again, associated with bad outcomes in a variety of different ways. In contradistinction, the diet that's proffered as the good diet or the healthy diet for most patients is the Mediterranean diet. And this is really comprised of a diet that's high in fiber, low animal protein, low saturated fat, and characterized in particular by higher ingestion of vegetables, fruits, and healthy fat, and a lower intake of red meat and dairy. We do know that the dietary guidelines for Americans actually recommend the Mediterranean diet in improving health and preventing disease. So we have dietary recommendations that this is the one that promotes health and minimizes disease. Why is that? Well, particularly, let's talk just briefly about fiber. Fiber is soluble and insoluble fiber. The soluble fiber is one that gets digested, and the insoluble fiber moves through the GI tract, in particular bringing components of water absorption and promoting gut motility, in particular in the colon. The insoluble fiber has a variety of ascribed benefits, in particular as it relates to the changes in the gut production of short-chain fatty acids, which are incredibly important as it relates to optimizing intestinal function. We do know that these short-chain fatty acids actually increase secretion of immunoglobulins, induce regulatory T-cell tissue repair, promote antimicrobial peptides and mucus production, and basically optimize intestinal function and the intestinal barrier integrity. And this is all critically important in promoting health. Now, there is some data also on short-chain fatty acid production as it relates to crossing the blood-brain barrier and ascribing then even more of a association with the brain-gut axis and potentially changes in gut-related derivatives driving mood and behavioral activities in the brain. So the short-chain fatty acid derivative from the intestinal microbiome may have CNS, and does have CNS-related effects. There are also some data very interesting as it relates to COVID and COVID progression to severe disease or long-haul COVID, or even the development of COVID has been tied at least to changes in microbial diversity. So enhanced microbial diversity seem to be somewhat protective, and certainly if infected with COVID, predictive of a rapid response and resolution, and in particular, in also as a marker for short-chain fatty acids when they're reduced. In particular, also branched-chain shorty acid called L-isoleucine has been shown to be predictive of longer consequences, more severe COVID. So again, diet effect may have a significant role potentially in even in the COVID world. Now, let's talk about other things in the diet that may mitigate disease in particular. Some of the things that are added to the diet, we've been shown to have significant effect in animal models as changing gut integrity. And in particular, these come out with a standard Western diet when these prepacked foods as things that are used for emulsifiers and food additives that are aesthetics to enhance palatization of enhancers of food when it's in your mouth. And things that we see routinely are carboxymethylcellulose, polysorbate 80. These are derivatives in a variety of dairy products. Actually, interestingly, in ice cream, they decelerate the melting of ice cream. It may be good for your kids eating the ice cream cone in the back seat in the summer, but not so good potentially for the intestine. The same as it relates to maltodextrin is a very common thickener and sweetener used, but again decreases the mucosal layer thickness and increases gut permeability. And also as it relates to carrageenan, this is again something that's added increased texture. It's made from red seaweed, in particular in dairy products and sauces, again decreasing gut integrity and permeability changes and taxigenic changes for translocation. One of the other things that's very common as it relates to food additives is the use of high fructose corn syrup. Again, this is something that we're seeing more and more data, and this is in particular associated in the sugary beverages, which have been implied now clearly associated with increased risk for early colon cancer as it relates to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a variety of other cancer pathways, most recently ascribed also to be associated with liver cancer in postmenopausal women ingesting one sugary beverage a day. Sugary beverages almost uniformly have this because for a long period of time they've shifted from adding really true sugar to high fructose corn syrup, which is cheaper and sweeter than cane sugar. Interestingly, as this data has become more onerous as it relates to disease associations. Early as 2012, the corn industry went to the FDA and petitioned to change the name from high fructose corn syrup to corn sugar. It sounds a lot easier and maybe even sweeter as it relates to implications, but in fact the FDA said no. And since then we've had challenges that this has been ascribed to high fructose corn syrup in food has been described as a food public health crisis. We have recent data as it relates to animal models showing mechanistically how this contributes to colon cancer. Again, looking at the ingestion of high fructose corn syrup is something that is very easy to avoid when you talk about sugary beverages. How about going the other way as it relates to artificial sweeteners? Well, we do know that the top three artificial sweeteners that have been studied as it relates to aspartame, saccharin, and also Splenda, and this relates to a variety of the artificial sweeteners. We do know that these are still not absorbed, but they're fermentable sugars that get to the gut. They change the gut microbiome, and in animal models actually have been shown to promote obesity and diabetes. Very much paradoxic to what the used intent is. This has only been studied for those three agents. So again, something that I would say we don't have data also in lower threshold exposures, but it is something that I think in common sense, minimizing the use of these things using natural sugars and waters and those type things are what I discuss with my patients. So we can go the wrong way in making our patients too rigid on reading labels, and I want to caution you that there are disorders emerging about food restrictive disorders that become very much an eating disorder, so we don't want to go the opposite way. I just try and tell my patients, be a good, conscientious thinker. Look at your food, minimize the processed foods, and build your meals. The Western diet needs to go. The Mediterranean diet really is simple. Build your foods, think about it. You can still have your occasional cheeseburger and French fries, but use common sense. Again, the more we can use the Mediterranean diet, I think the better we can do this. I routinely ascribe this to my patients: inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, again, inflammatory disease conditions. But I do think we can generally make this a recommendation across all patients, looking at promoting health and thereby preventing disease. Again, Dr. David Johnson, thanks again for listening. Hope this has been helpful.